it looks like they're getting snow Sunday morning to Sunday afternoon, lasting 8 hours. That would be tomorrow. Okay. And then in my father's hometown of Cheongju, North Pyongan Province in Korea, currently 48 and mostly cloudy, cloudy through the night and 36 for a low. Tomorrow, mostly cloudy and cooler, breezy in the afternoon, and high of 44 tomorrow. At the Chonygun Palace in Northeast Pennsylvania, 33 degrees and mostly cloudy. Sun and some clouds today, a flurry this morning, followed by a sprinkle this afternoon, 45 degrees for a high. Tonight, snow shower with low clouds, low of 32. Suncheon Palace in Korea, currently 44 and clear. Remaining clear through the night, low of 43, so almost no change in the temperature there. And tomorrow, remaining warm with some clouds, then sunshine, high of 66. And we're missing something, aren't we? Yes, we're missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, we're missing the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground. Oh, wait, I'll have to get it later. 48 degrees at the Gunma Palaces in Japan and clear, mainly clear through the night at 35 degrees for a low. Tomorrow, plenty of sunshine, high of 62. Guangzhou, Guangdong, China, 75 and clear, mainly cloud with a shower in places late 64 for a low tonight. Tomorrow, a high of 83, a couple of morning showers, otherwise very warm with increasing clouds. Let's try to get a quick read on, where was that? Yeah, okay. Okay. Okay, I had it and I let it get away from me. Here we go. Okay. 54 right now at the Liberty Rock RV Park and Campground in Limestone County, Texas. Mostly cloudy, partly sunny and windy today, getting up to 67. Tonight, clear and windy and cooler, low of 36. There we go. I did not want to leave them out, did we? Okay, and then let's go to Father's Word. Hold on just a second. Let's see here. I'm in the book on the Pan-Pacific or the Pacific Rim Providence. It says here, I guess that's the official English translation, chapter 5. And we're talking about UK. UK's in the news recently. Britain was the Eve nation. Obviously, Father's talking about the situation in World War II. Adam's family was lost due to the failures of Eve and her two sons, Cain and Abel. Since Cain and Abel failed to unite, they fell. Britain, in the form of a global nation, was the fruition of the restoration of that incident. Britain is an island nation. The island nation always longs for the land. This symbolizes Eve, the mother. America is the country born from the Eve nation, centering on the Anglo-Saxon race. That is why it is able. France is the archangel, although France was the enemy, having opposed Britain and America. In the last days, there will be unification centering on the allied nations of Britain, America, and France. Speaking here, March 24th, 1996. He says, in the last days, there will be unification centered on the allied nations of Britain, America, and France. Okay. Are we talking about something in the future? I'd like to go back to the Korean on that one. Anyway, so in the last days, unification centering on the allied nations of Britain, America, and France. Okay. All right. Praise God for that lesson this morning. And so let's see what is going on. We have a bunch of stuff going on. Of course, I'm sure you've heard by now that the Supreme Court ruled against President Trump on the various tariffs that he's been imposing on country by country. And but it's sort of complicated because as soon as that, or very quickly after that came out, President Trump responded with, okay, a blanket tariff, 10% on everybody. And as I've been saying, the weakening of the dollar, or the fall of the dollar's value against the major trading partners, as indicated in the DXY dollar index, over the past year, I guess 13 months now, more than 10%, right? So this is an effective tariff on those major trading partners, including the EU and UK and Japan and so forth. So there's already an effective tariff of 10% on because of the weakening dollar. And then he's also now putting on another 10% just blanket across the board for everybody, because apparently that situation has been tested in courts before. So, and he's not happy about this. And actually also, let's see here. Clarence Thomas gave a blistering critique of the Supreme Court's decision. Of course, he is one of the three justices that dissented in this opinion. And so let's take a look at what he is saying. Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas joined two of his colleagues in dissenting from an unfortunate opinion. Who's calling it unfortunate? Story. Okay. On Friday, according to the Carolina Journal, SCOTUS, so that's SCOTUS stands for Supreme Court of the United States, ruled 63 that under the 1977 International Emergency Economic Powers Act, President Donald Trump does not have the authority to impose tariffs, a power the U.S. Constitution assigns to the legislature. In a separate dissent, Thomas insisted that the High Court's majority got it wrong. The legendary conservative justice argued that while Congress may not delegate its core legislative power, it may delegate, and many times has delegated, enumerated powers such as tariff-making power. Because the Constitution assigns Congress many powers that do not implicate the non-delegation doctrine, Congress may delegate the exercise of many powers to the president. Congress has done so repeatedly since the founding with this court's blessing, Thomas wrote. The power to impose duties on imports can be delegated. In 2025, Trump invoked IEEPA as a statutory justification for his sweeping tariffs. Crucially, IEEPA's Section 203 authorized the president to, quote, investigate, regulate, direct, and compel, nullify, void, prevent, or prohibit any acquisition, holding, withholding, use, transfer, withdrawal, transportation, importation, or exportation of, or dealing in, or exercising any, that's a long sentence, or exercising any right, power, or privilege with respect to, or transactions involving, well, this is a sentence that only a lawyer can love, any property in which any foreign country, okay, that's enough of that sentence. Assuming one could even imagine a broader delegation of emergency powers, one wonders if human language could express it. Indeed, both Thomas and Justice Brett Kavanaugh placed proper emphasis on the words regulate and importation. I join Justice Kavanaugh's principal dissent in full, Thomas began, as he explains the court's decision today cannot be justified as a matter of statutory interpretation. Congress authorized the president to regulate importation. Moreover, and here lies the key, throughout American history, the authority to regulate importation has been understood to include the authority to impose duties on imports. As one might expect, conservative Justice Samuel Alito joined Thomas and Kavanaugh in dissenting. Meanwhile, Chief Justice John Roberts, along with Justice Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett, joined the three liberals, Justices Elena Kagan, Sonia Sotomayor, and Ketanji Brown Jackson, in the majority. Gorsuch, in particular, merits some attention, for he invoked the major questions doctrine. The Constitution lodges the nation's lawmaking powers in Congress alone, and the major questions doctrine safeguards that assignment against executive encroachment. Gorsuch wrote, under the doctrine's terms, the president must identify clear statutory authority for the extraordinary delegated power he claims. And as the principal opinion explains, that is a standard he cannot meet. In short, Gorsuch regularly seems to incline to err on any side of any question that protects strict constitutional interpretation. He does not want the government stretching its powers through liberal readings of that founding document. In that sense, he resembles Republican Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky. Notably, the three liberals joined the majority in ruling against the tariffs, but avoided reliance on the major questions doctrine. That is because Kagan, Sotomayor, and Jackson approve of a liberal reading of the Constitution in general, but not in the way that might expand Trump's power, which makes them hypocrites. Yes, okay, that's nothing new. As Thomas and Kavanaugh showed, however, the major questions doctrine has no relevance. After all, Congress expressly authorized the president to, quote, regulate importation. Trump reportedly denounced the ruling as a disgrace. Thomas, it seems, would agree, based on the principle of when in doubt, read the statute. We do too, where IEEPA's express grant of emergency regulatory power could not be more clear. All right, so that's also an opinion of this guy, the Western Journal, although it does not say it's an opinion, but it is effectively an opinion, not a story, not a news story. But anyway, yes. So anyway, the Supreme Court, and as I've said, hey, the Constitution says whatever the Supreme Court says, it says. I mean, if they could find a justification for abortion in 1973, I don't know why they couldn't find a justification for President Trump's tariffs today. That would seem to be a pretty easy thing for them to do if they wanted to do that. But I think they were influenced by sort of the wokeness, shall we say, and especially Roberts, the Chief Justice, has always impressed me as being someone who, the rich kid at school who wants to get along with everyone. He just wants to be loved by everyone. And I think probably, that's what happened there. And I don't know what happened with Amy Coney Barrett or who's the other one, Kavanaugh. No, Kavanaugh dissented. Who's the other one? Gorsuch. Okay, Gorsuch. I don't know what happened with Gorsuch, but I think Roberts just wants to be. But anyway, we will see. This thing sort of plays out, and I'm not even sure what is in God's will in this case. Trump was counting on the revenue from the tariffs to give out a $2,000 check to everyone. And I guess now he can blame the Supreme Court for why that's not going to happen. And I'm kind of skeptical that it was going to happen in the first place. But anyway, now he has an excuse. Maybe that's good news that he has an excuse. But he was also saying that, with the tariffs, we can eventually get rid of the income tax entirely. And well, it's true that, prior to, 1913, when the income tax was instituted, the U.S. government was funded primarily by tariffs. Going back to basically to the 19th century might have been a bit of an overreach. I don't know. Anyway, so we'll see how this continues to develop, and it's important because it is going to influence the outcome of the midterm elections, I believe, because now President Trump is not able to sort of steer the economy in the way that he wanted. And right now, it looks like things are going into the direction of kind of a stagflation, where you have low growth and inflation. Yesterday, a new reading of the GDP came out, which was significantly lower than was expected. So it's possible that is what is going to happen. And as I've said before, my base case right now is that the Republicans will lose the majority in the midterm elections this coming autumn. That's my base case, meaning that unless something significant happens, that's the case. That's the situation that I expect. Unless something really significant changes things. and of course, there are many reasons for me to say that. One, of course, is just the historical pattern, which is that when there's a change in a party in the White House from Democrat to Republican, as in this particular case, from Biden to Trump, when there's that kind of a change, then the party in the White House loses seats in the next midterm election 2 years after that victory for the White House. And that has been the case almost every time. One significant time that it did not happen was George Bush after 9/11. That was because the country was really quite united with the president then, and so he was able to use that as a way to maintain and actually increase Republican seats in the House then. But that's an exceptional situation, and that's what I mean. There has to be an exceptional situation. Now, if China attacks Taiwan, perhaps that could be an exceptional situation. If but there are all sorts of black swans sort of floating around, shall we say? There are all sorts of. Remember, a black swan is an event that is not impossible, but but considered to be so improbable that people don't actually prepare for it. And there are all sorts of black swans that are possible right now. So we'll see what God has in mind, and we'll see what He's able to do based on our conditions that we set. Okay? Perhaps the collapse of the Chinese Communist Party, that would be a black swan. You see, because that's possible, but it's considered extremely improbable. I mean, between now and November, extremely improbable, so that no one is really preparing for that in a significant way. Who knows what? But anyway, that is my base case, and I think this ruling by the Supreme Court probably makes that base case more likely than not. Okay. All right. Now, let's go to Iran, because as I was saying, this is a dangerous situation because, as I mentioned yesterday, Father does not approve. In fact, he strongly disapproves of people of faith going to war against each other. And he expressed that very strongly in the case of the wars against Iraq. He tried very hard to get a message to the White House, before the first Iraq war, and anyway, that wasn't able to stop that war. And the king has given a testimony about how Father was so angry that he actually became extremely ill to the point where there was a potential danger to his life. So anyway, now, of course, Trump has already bombed Iran once, and this may be another limited sort of bombing. So I don't know if this is going to cross Father's red line or not, but Trump does need to be very, very careful with this. Let's see here. Iranian sources tell Fox News Digital that Tehran understands war risk but cannot accept missile program limitations. Mm-hmm. And Trump is giving Iran a 10-day ultimatum. But as this article points out, the last time he said, well, he was going to decide within 2 weeks whether to strike Iran, and then he made a decision 2 days later, not 2 weeks, but 2 days. So this may be a similar situation. On Thursday, he gave Tehran another deadline, saying the Islamic Republic has 10 to 15 days to come to the negotiating table or face consequences. The compressed timeline now sits at the center of a new round of high-stakes nuclear diplomacy. But with Trump, deadlines can serve as both a warning and a weapon. Jason Brodsky, policy director at the United Against Nuclear Iran, told Fox News Digital the Iranian regime has been operating under a grand delusion that they can turn President Trump into President Obama, and President Trump has made it clear that that's not happening. Brodsky said there is little expectation inside the administration that diplomacy will produce a breakthrough. I think there's a deep skepticism in the Trump administration that this negotiation is going to produce any acceptable outcome, he said. Instead, he said talks may be serving a dual purpose. They're using the diplomatic process to sharpen the choices of the Iranian leadership and to buy time to make sure that we have the appropriate military assets in the region, Brodsky said. A Middle Eastern source with knowledge of the negotiations told Fox News Digital Tehran, okay, I guess there's need to be another, should be a comma there, told Fox News Digital, comma, Tehran understands how close the risk of war feels and is unlikely to deliberately provoke Trump at this stage. However, the source said Iran cannot accept limitations on its short-range missile program, describing the issue as a firm red line set by Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Iranian negotiators are not authorized to cross that boundary, and conceding on missiles would be viewed internally as equivalent to losing a war. The source indicated there may be more flexibility about uranium enrichment parameters if sanctions relief is part of the equation. According to Brodsky, Iran's core position remains unchanged. They're trying to engage in a lot of distractions, shiny objects, to distract from the fact that they're not prepared to make concessions that President Trump is requiring of them, he said. Iranian positions do not change and have not changed fundamentally. They refuse to accept President Trump's position on zero enrichment. They refuse to dismantle their nuclear infrastructure. They refuse limitations on Iran's missile program, and they refuse to end support for terror groups. Behnam Taleblu, senior fellow at the Foundation for Defense of Democracy, has warned that Tehran may be preparing a different kind of proposal altogether. The first kind of deal that we have to be worried about, that they may pitch an agreement that is based more on transposing the current reality onto paper. These kinds of agreements are more like understandings, Taleblu said. You take the present reality and you transpose that onto paper, and then you make the U.S. pay for something it already achieved. Taleblu outlined what he sees as Tehran's strategic objectives. Iranians want three things, essentially, he said. The first is they want to deter and prevent a strike. The second is they are actually using negotiations to take the wind out of the wings of Iranian dissidents. And then the third is they actually do want some kind of foreign financial stabilization and sanctions relief. What the Iranians want is to play for time. An agreement like this doesn't really require the Iranians to offer anything. At the same time, Taleblu said the administration's intentions remain deliberately opaque. It's hard to read the tea leaves of the administration here, Taleblu said. Obviously, they don't want a nuclear Iran, but also, obviously, they don't want a long war in the Middle East. The military architecture they're moving into the region is signaling that they're prepared to engage in one anyway. The question that the administration has not resolved politically is, what is the political end state of the strikes? That's the cultivation of ambiguity that the president excels at. We keep getting new pop-ups here. Jacob Olidort, Chief Research Officer and Director of the American Security at the America First Policy Institute. You notice how we have this whole litany of institutes and think tanks and everything like that, and every article that we come to, no wonder the population of Washington is so large, right? Or not Washington itself, but in the surrounding area. It's just amazing how many institutes and stuff that they have here. Told Fox News Digital, the president has been clear that he wants to give diplomacy a chance. However, and they all seem to have some kind of a connection to the White House, right? They seem to know what the White House is thinking or something like that. The White House must be very busy briefing all these different institutes. However, in his estimation, diplomatic efforts prove unsuccessful, he will almost certainly turn to military options. What is rightfully unpredictable is the specific objective and scope of military action the president may take. Specifically, will military action serve as a new layer of diplomatic pressure towards creating a new opportunity to make Iran agree to our demands, military force as coercive diplomacy, or simply achieve the intended objectives of diplomacy could not. Regardless, the president has a record of taking bold action to protect the American people from Iran's threats. Okay. And we have a couple more paragraphs. Public sentiment inside Iran remains deeply divided. Iranian sources told Fox News Digital. Many view a foreign military invasion as unacceptable, while anger over the killing of young protesters continues to fuel domestic tensions and uncertainty. With a 10 to 15-day window ticking, Trump's deadline may function less as a calendar marker and more as leverage. Well, I hope, and I'm sure you do too, hope that world war can be avoided. This is not a war that Father wants to happen, right? He wants people of faith to unite in the fight against communism and to resist communism. And this kind of thing certainly does not serve that. And Iran, because it is close to China, needs to be weaned away from China. And I think this kind of a war would probably drive it even closer to China. Wars always have unintended consequences, and I'm afraid that this one may be another situation like that. Okay. All right, we've got some stuff going on in North Korea. We have the Workers' Party, which is the name for the Communist Party there. Workers' Party is holding a conference that they hold every 5 years. And of course, this is a rubber stamp situation, but people look at it to get a kind of a sense of what's going on within the leadership. And Kim Jong Un has made a speech there, and he has declared that everything has fundamentally changed. So let's take a look at this. So here, okay, that's not Kim Jong Un. Oh, here he is. Here he is. Here. Okay. This is him here. And they're holding their fists up for some reason. Oh, I see. They're holding this is how they vote. They hold up their little red books. And if you forget your red book at home, you may as well not go home that night. All right. No forgiveness. All right. Let's take a look at what's going on there. Right, let's see here. The Democratic People's Republic of Korea, that's the official name of North Korea, is projecting newfound confidence and optimism as thousands of its uniparty delegates flood Pyongyang for their semi-decennial Congress. That means every 5 years. As usual, the tightly calibrated, almost mechanical rhetoric on display has offered little insight into the clandestine operations of the world's most mysterious regime. But intelligence agencies and foreign observers know that when one is trying to understand the trajectory of North Korea, the devil is in the details. Well, in the case of North Korea, actually, the devil is in a lot more than just the details. But anyway, let's move on. Supreme Leader Kim Jong Un delivered the opening speech at the 9th Workers' Party Congress on Friday, where he allowed himself to admit that the nation was facing collapse when the previous Congress was convened just 5 years ago. When we convened the 8th Party Congress, the subjective and objective conditions of our revolution were literally so harsh that we could hardly maintain our own existence, Kim admitted to the gathered delegates in a rare display of vulnerability. The hostile forces grew more reckless in their schemes for a harsh blockade and sanctions against us, and we were also confronted with successive natural calamities and the global public health crisis. 5 years ago was 2021. So that's when North Korea completely shut its borders, just sealed its borders completely, and no one in, no one out. However, everything has fundamentally changed today, 5 years from then, he contended, Today, we are here at its ninth Congress, filled with optimism and confidence in the future. So what has changed? Of course, COVID is over, but what has really changed is the relationship with the not Soviet Union, relationship with Russia, and North Korea's participation in the Ukraine war, and the various uh, sort of quid pro quos that they're receiving from Russia in exchange for sending troops to Ukraine. And in terms of course, oil, but also in terms of technology, especially rocket technology, missile technology, nuclear technology. Russia has, I think, contributed. I get the sense that they have contributed a great deal to the North Korean economy, and also to the development of North Korea's missile program, nuclear program, over the last, well, 3 or 4 years that North Korea has been involved in the Ukraine war. So that's the biggest change that has occurred. In terms of China, I don't think there's been a whole lot of change, but certainly Russia is the big factor. Okay. Kim might have been stunted to outside observers, might have felt stunted to outside observers, weighed down with the extensive inside baseball commentary on party politics that could sound robotic and formulaic to those outside the rigid hierarchy of the Hermetic regime. The Supreme Leader diligently acknowledged the various non-permanent preparatory committees and the 5-point party building line in the new era. He recognized how each field and sector participated in setting the goals and working out the plans for development to be achieved in the period of the new long-term plan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Cold utilitarian jargon is the de facto language of inward-facing Workers' Party politics. The political party is the sole organ of power in the nation and is enshrined as such in the North Korean constitution. There is little room for ideological discussion or debate, although they call themselves what the Democratic, it's the first word, right? Democratic People's Republic. It's the first word, but no, little room for discussion or debate. Only critique and observation of the party's unanimous positions. The Supreme Leader did not so much as acknowledge a single other country by name, a disappointment for those seeking to learn more about the regime's current attitude toward the White House. But it's hardly a surprise, given North Korea's track record of isolation that has earned it the nickname the Hermit Kingdom. The heir apparent, North Korean observers are most preoccupied with Kim's succession plan. Well, because there's little else to really talk about with North Korea. Intelligence reports from South Korea have long indicated that there is considerable reason to believe the Supreme Leader plans to name his daughter Kim Joo-ae as his heir apparent. The girl, who is believed to be in her early teens, has been thrust into the spotlight of North Korean news media after repeated appearances at her father's side. A female Kim sitting atop the North Korean hierarchy would have been unthinkable just years ago. Well, in my opinion, it's still unthinkable. I think, there's talk about the Kim Joo-ae forces, and obviously Kim Joo-ae and herself and Kim Yo-jong, the little sister, are not going to go, mano a mano, one-on-one combat after Kim Jong Un's death, but there will be forces united on each, or sort of tied to each side, and those forces will almost certainly go to war with each other. So seems like there is going to be a civil war, but the winner of that civil war is not going to be one of the two women. It's going to be probably the military leader who comes out ahead, whether it's the little girl's side or the little sister's side. So we'll see what happens. But if Kim Jong Un dies, it's going to be very, very, well, interesting, I guess is the word. Tragic is also another word. There's going to be a lot of bloodshed, I'm afraid. Anyway, we'll see what happens. But yeah, I've said before that when Kim Jong Un dies, I think that the remaining lifespan of the little girl will be counted in hours rather than days or weeks. So we'll see. We'll see. I expect if I were betting, I would put my money on the little sister, Kim Yo Jong. She's clearly she may be running things right now. I think she may be the what shall I say, the Wonju McDevitt of North Korea. Well, did I cross the line there? Sorry. Okay. Okay, here we go. So a female Kim sitting atop the North Korean hierarchy would have been unthinkable just years ago, especially considering the fact that Kim Jong Un is believed to have a male child born around 2010. That son has never been seen in public. He is also believed to have a third child born around 2017, but the gender of the child is unknown. But you see, this is the thing. People who have escaped from North Korea said that they didn't even know that Kim Jong Un existed until it was announced that he's the next leader, that he's the heir apparent. So they can always pull a Kim out of a hat somewhere, saying, "Oh, look, we have a boy here, we have a young man here," and yeah, he's Kim Jong Un's secret son. And they've done this in the past, and they can do it again. So that's another reason why I don't think either of these two women are actually going to be at the top, at least not for very long, even if well, we'll see anything can happen in North Korea. Okay. When Jue accompanied her father on a rare international trip to China, the South Korean National Intelligence Service reported that it appears Kim is crafting a narrative to give his young daughter legitimacy as his heir. Those intelligence officials have only become more confident over time. That may be his plan, but once he's gone, I think it'll be a free-for-all. The Workers' Party Congress, the premier legislative meeting of the country's uniparty government, is the optimal time for the supreme leader to make this hypothetical selection official. If Jue makes a center stage appearance with her father during the Congress, or especially if she receives an official post within the government, it is widely believed that her status will be sealed. That's why at this photograph at the top, I was looking if I could see the young girl, but she's not there, unless she's wearing a suit and tie, which I doubt. Right. Then, there's a woman there, but okay. And I think maybe I see another. This could be Yojong here. All the others are men. So you think these men are going to allow a 14-year-old kid to be their boss? No, no, they're not. I don't care if she has the Pektu lineage. No, they're not. They're not. No way. Okay, let's see here. So anyway, there are all sorts of speculation about what would happen if a Kim Jue becomes head of North Korea. Anyway, so I think there's really no sense in our speculating on that because it's not going to happen. All right, let's go here to China. This guy keeps appearing with all his gold coins. Yeah. He's an actor, isn't he? I've forgotten his name. He was in one of those soap operas for a long time, I think, wasn't he? Anyway, this is how he makes his money now. China's explosive test to push for a completely new nuclear arsenal. U.S. intelligence agencies believe that China is developing a new generation of nuclear weapons and has conducted at least one covert explosive test in recent years as part of a broader push to completely transform its nuclear arsenal into the world's most technologically advanced, according to multiple sources familiar with the U.S. intelligence assessments. U.S. assessment of China's intention to radically advance its nuclear weapons is fueling debate inside the intelligence community and beyond over whether there has been a shift in Beijing's thinking on nuclear strategy, the sources said. The investment in its nuclear arsenal is pushing China closer to peer status with Russia and the US. Right now, it has significantly fewer warheads than either Russia or the US, and could yield technical capabilities neither of the two dominant nuclear powers currently possess. So I guess they're trying to sort of technically, from a technological point of view, sort of leapfrog both the US and Russia. China secretly conducted an explosive nuclear test in June 2020 at the Lap Nur facility in the country's northwest, despite a self-imposed moratorium on such activity that has been in place since 1996, and was planning to do more in the future, according to the sources in recent statements from the US officials. While the 2020 test was disclosed publicly by US State Department officials this month, the purpose of the test has not been previously revealed. Evidence collected as part of a subsequent review of the June 2020 event has led US officials to conclude that the test was motivated by China's pursuit of next-generation nuclear weapons, the sources familiar said. That includes efforts to develop additional weapon systems capable of delivering multiple miniaturized nuclear weapons from a single missile. China also appears to be developing low-yield tactical nuclear weapons, something the country has never previously produced, that could be deployed against targets closer to home, including in scenarios where Beijing responds to a potential US defense of Taiwan, the sources added. China has been aggressively expanding its nuclear sites. US intelligence officials have previously reported publicly, with analysts suspecting that China might be pursuing new technologies. Now, US officials believe there is strong evidence to support that theory, in part because of what it has learned about the 2020 test. China has had a nuclear arsenal since 1964. It has produced warheads faster than any country in the world, although the size of its arsenal trails far behind Russia and the US, which continue to own the lion's share of the world's nuclear weapons. Asked about the US intelligence assessments of its nuclear program, a spokesman for the Chinese embassy in Washington told CNN that the United States has distorted and smeared China's nuclear policy. Of course, yeah, it's only, we're always about peace. We're always about peace. Yeah. Okay, let's skip that one. Okay. Let's skip the guy of the Chinese embassy. The defense official said that Pentagon does not comment on the intelligence assessments tied to specific alleged nuclear test events. Okay, and then, all right. Okay, so they're going to go back to some history. Historically, China has viewed its nuclear capabilities as a means of self-defense and deterring other countries from using. Right. Okay, well, yeah. The US officials believe primary reasons. Let's see, China's nuclear weapons may lack confidence in the limited nuclear weapons data they collected during only 45 tests, most of which were conducted in the atmosphere and poorly instrumented, according to Jeffrey Lewis, an arms control expert at the Middlebury Institute of International Studies. That US officials believe is one of the primary reasons why China would resume explosive testing. They have a brand new generation of weapons for which they have no database, said one of the sources familiar with the matter. A part of that modernization push is that China has been investing heavily in maneuverability and survivability, multiple sources told CNN, noting Beijing has long feared the US could potentially wipe out its entire force before it can shoot back, or at least inflict enough damage to effectively neuter it. Right? So we'll see what happens here. Okay. Right. All right, that's about all we need from that. And there we go again. Yeah. We're still following on the sort of the stablecoin and crypto situation because it looks like this is going to be a major change in the international global financial sort of architecture that may affect us all. And this is kind of a negative opinion. And so I want to present this. We need to look at this because we had a sort of pro opinion a few days back about how everything is going to change. Now this guy says no, it's not going to change. But remember that new technologies come along, and there are always people who say, this is not going to do anything. For example, the people who are saying that the internet will not have any greater influence on society than the fax machine. One person was commenting that, in the Back to the Future movies, one of the movies that has the future, I think, where it goes into the future, and in the future home, there are 4 or 5 fax machines. Because when the movie was made, fax machines were the sort of they were the cutting edge of technology, right? And so the script writers assumed that as time moved forward and science developed more, that future homes would have more fax machines. Now, of course, if you want to send a fax, and sometimes there are some people who insist on receiving a fax. I know I've had that experience. Um, so if you want to send a fax, where do you go? Well, I think you can go to 7-Eleven, or maybe used to be able to go to Staples, but then they closed down. Anyway, so so it's always hard to predict how technology is going to advance. Just like fax machines did not sort of take over the world, right? We don't have 4 or 5 fax machines in each home. Instead, we have the internet, and we have email, and we have PDF. uh, and the Microsoft Word is capable of creating PDF files, and then we can send them by email. So who knows? Who knows how this is going to work out? But anyway, Neil Kashkari is a skeptic on the future of both stablecoins and crypto. So let's take a look at what he says. Neil Kashkari, the president of the U.S. Federal Reserve Bank of Minneapolis, says that crypto is utterly useless in comparison to artificial intelligence, and took a swipe at stablecoins, saying they don't have many uses. Speaking at the 2026 Midwest Economic Outlook Summit on Thursday, Kashkari drew comparisons between AI and crypto, saying the latter has been around for more than a decade and it's utterly useless. AI has not been around very long, and people are using it every day, he added. This is demonstrating to me that this thing is real, and it has real long-term potential for the U.S. economy as opposed to crypto. Kashkari said that the way the crypto industry has framed how stablecoins can be used is a buzzword salad. I always ask people, what can I do with stablecoins that I can't do with Venmo today, he said. I could send any one of you $5 with Venmo or PayPal or Zelle. So what is it that this magical stablecoin can do? And I get a buzzword salad answer, blah, 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 tokenized deposits. Well, you know what I cannot do by PayPal? You know what I cannot do with PayPal? Do you know what I cannot do with PayPal? Anything, because they deplatformed me. Right? That's been, what is it now? A little over 4 years. And recently I went into PayPal to see if there's any update. And sure enough, they still say that I am forever banned. All right, forever banned. I mean, even after Tony comes, I don't know about that, but forever, and ever and ever, or as long as PayPal exists, whichever comes first. I am banned from PayPal. I have an account, but I cannot receive money, and I cannot send money, and I cannot do anything else on PayPal except download my past payment data or whatever it is. Okay. So that's my response to Kashkari, right? With stable coins, and with stable coins too, I suppose Tether could ban me, although I don't use Tether, but potentially, okay. But there are cryptos that deal with that. There are censorship proof and what else? Permissionless. So Kashkari is in a position where, he's in the castle, and he cannot imagine a situation of someone like me who has been banned from PayPal for what reason? I don't know, and they won't tell me. They will not tell me why they banned me. Just some general legalese language, right? So Kashkari does not have that kind of experience. But people who have those experiences are moving away from banks and from Venmo and even from Zelle. Zelle, I think, I don't know how other people use Zelle. I use Zelle through my bank. So if my bank were to close my account, then I would also no longer have access to Zelle unless there's another way of using it. I don't know. Is there a way of using Zelle without a bank? I'm not aware of it. Maybe there is. So anyway, so so his viewpoint is limited. He's not down here with the peasants, who are always waking up every morning and wondering what are the overloads going to do to me today? What are they going to ban my bank account? Are they going to shut me down? How are they going to take away my money? You know, this is what we peasants are worried about. And Kashkari, of course, is one of the rulers, so he's not worried about that. Okay, so yeah, blah 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 tokenized deposits. But okay, well, if I were to answer him, I would say, yeah, see, I have been banned by PayPal for no reason that I'm aware of, and that is what I cannot do right now on PayPal. I cannot do anything on PayPal. Kashkari took specific aim at the notion of stablecoins being used for remittances, as he highlighted that this mainly serves people outside the US. Well, yeah, there is a world outside the US, and argued that it's not as cheap as people think. He used the example of his father-in-law based in the Philippines, arguing that while he could receive stablecoins quickly, he still needs to pay fees to convert them into the local currency to actually transact with them. If everybody in the world uses the same currency or the same payment platform, all these frictions go away. But all these other countries are not going to abandon their own monetary policy for stablecoins, he said. When it comes to anything about crypto or stablecoins, ask the most basic questions and don't settle for word salad nonsense answers, he said. Okay, well, all right. So that is my answer to him. And as people experience more and more of this nonsense, more and more people are going to be attracted to payment methods that are permissionless and are censorship resistant, confiscation resistant. Right? Right now, uh, if the IRS decides that you owe more than what you've paid, then after a few letters and things like that, they have the power to go into your bank account and take the money that they think they are owed. Yeah. Well, one person near and dear to me had that experience, not myself, but one person did. Not with the IRS, but with a certain state level revenue agency. So this is what they do. This is what they do. Yeah, they just go in and they take the money that they think they are owed. Whereas with crypto assets that are in cold storage, that is, well, much more difficult. Much more difficult. All right. We shall see what we shall see here. Neil Kashkari. Yeah. In the past, he said some good things, but on this one, he's off. Off. He's off. Okay. Right. Okay. What is this? Venezuelan military attempts carrier blockade. What now? Aren't they kind of late? Anyway, the horse is out of the barn, or actually, let's see here. FBI warns ATM jackpotting attacks are soaring. Here's what you need to know. It's an ATM jackpotting attack. Okay. Physically breaking into an ATM to install malware and get it to spill the money is on the rise across the US. Well, okay, there you go. Okay, that's another reason to use digital currencies. And Okay, trying to find something here. Why the Fed can't kill inflation and maybe making it worse. Yeah, well, so let's get rid of the Fed, close the Fed, abolish the Fed. Let's see here. All right, okay. All right, let's go someplace else here. Let's go to the Epic Times, all right. Okay, EPA repeals Biden-era mercury standards for coal-fired power plants. Okay, Trump signs order to impose 10% global tariffs after Supreme Court ruling. Okay, we got that. And here's how much revenue the overturned tariffs bring in. Of course, the question is, so what's going to happen to the money that has already been collected? And President Trump has made it clear that people are going to have to go to court in order to get that money back if they want a refund. Well, they'll have to be litigated, so there's going to be a very long litigation process for that money. It may not be worth it. People might just say, forget it. Yeah. Okay. And investors pivot to hard assets amid AI disruption concerns. Hard assets meaning real estate and gold and stuff like that. Capital is moving toward companies tied to physical assets and essential demand, such as energy and infrastructure. Concerns that artificial intelligence could make traditional digital service models obsolete have accelerated a market rotation in 2026, with investors trimming exposure to enterprise software and other digital service firms and shifting into hard assets and low obsolescence stocks, including energy, materials, and industrial companies. All right. Your mind can make muscles stronger. Here's how. Okay. All right. Mind over matter, I guess. Okay. All right. More from the Winter Olympics. New home sales hit near 4-year high in November, but existing home sales record biggest drop in nearly 4 years. A tiny Mediterranean island feels the heat of the mineral wars with China. Which island is that? Is that Malta by any chance, or Crete, or what, Cyprus? What? I'm curious. Let's find out. Just Chios. Hmm. Okay, you got my attention here. It's a feature article that came on. It's too long, too long. All right. Okay. Operational risks on AI, deploying AI. We got that yesterday. All right. And I guess in the few seconds we have left, we can take a look at Breitbart. Dark MAGA. Trump vows more tariffs after SCOTUS ruling. Okay. And lawless Supreme Court, according to J.D. Vance. So-called moderate Governor Spanberger's far-left goals exposed. And HUD Secretary Turner announces crackdown on illegal aliens in public housing. All right, so for now, anyway, there's a global tariff, a 10% tariff on all countries. Oh, I wasn't sharing that with you. Okay, apologize. All right, so that's it for today, and I will be back on Monday, but a different background. You know what that means. God bless, Godspeed, may His kingdom come quickly.